All right, welcome everybody to another Wednesday Product Spotlight, and boy, do we have a surprise for you today. Today we have Julian Bowron on, Chief Executive Officer at Catalyst Offsite. Julian has been in this industry for a very long time, and Julian knows a little bit something of another about offsite, volumetric, modular, construction, manufacturing, you name it. He has had several different companies throughout the years and has been one success after another. However, before we get into that, at Dave Cooper Live, we are bringing you the people and the processes that are building it better. Our guests and topics include experts in building systems, building science, building codes, and the tech used to build it better. We are always seeking out the best and the brightest in construction and discovering all of the ways that innovative buildings come to life. And a big thank you to our sponsors today. We have Forward Solutions Group, Ben Hershey and Joe Butler. They are a team with more than 175 years of experience developing and specifying manufacturing for panelized, volumetric, modular industries with best practices in development and implementation. They offer consulting with investors, developers, manufacturers, builders, and using offsite manufacturing methods. Forward Solutions is driving companies to succeed where others have failed. Please reach out to Ben at forwardsolutionsgroup.com to learn more. And I am so excited about this because it is a steel modular type of day on things that we've been talking about in the past. We also have a new sponsor. Thank you very much. Howick. Howick is a pioneer in technology of precision light steel roll forming machines. For over 40 years, their commitment to innovation in cold form steel, also known as light gauge steel, precision manufacturing, uncompromising quality, and exemplary customer service have defined Howick. Their commitment and underpins the competitive advantage enjoyed by their customers. To learn more, visit their website, howickltd.com. All right, enough of that. We are into it. Thank you to both of those sponsors. We will give you a shout out again later in the show. So let's hop into it, everybody. I'm going to bring Julian on. This is going to be a great show. We're not only going to talk about Catalyst Offsite, but we're going to also start talking about defining our industry. What categories are there? What are the definitions? How do we know how we fit in? So we're going to start off talking about Catalyst Offsite, but then we're going to hop into that next set of questions. Julian, how are you, my friend?
Good, good. Thank you for doing this. It's wonderful. I've been looking forward to joining you. Your show's terrific, and I've been entertained by it and learned quite a bit from it.
Well, I'm glad you know of us. That's a big deal. You've been in this industry a long time. A lot of people have watched you over the years and looked up to you and all your successes that you had. So it's a real honor to have you as part of our show today. You have a great name in our industry. So let's hop into this as we hop into every show. Julian, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we are going to call your mother. But you only have 2 minutes to do it. You knew that was coming, didn't you? I'll give you 4 if you really want it. Floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, I was born in a small town just outside of Toronto, was called Galt. Is now Cambridge. It was absorbed in another city. But I've lived in Toronto since I was 2. I actually trained as a tool and die maker, but then fell into the arts, I think very much because of the influence of my parents, who were both kind of artistic types. Actually, you could say they were beatniks. And I founded my first company in 1984, Feature Factory, and ran that until 2008 when I sold it to Canada's largest structural steel fabricators, the Walters Group. Left there in 2012 and started Vector Praxis, which I run to this day, and which owns this facility that I'm in and all of the equipment in it. And then as I think, lots of people are aware, I developed Vector Block while at Shop Construction in New York in 2013, and then sold that business to Zekelman Industries. They created Z Modular out of that. And then we've gone on to start Catalyst Offsite. And that's where we are today. Is that 2 minutes? I hope I made it.
No, listen, I would have gave you 4 minutes, man. Come on. I love it. So, Julian, we've had the pleasure of speaking a couple months ago. We talked a little bit about what you were doing with Catalyst Offsite. Why don't we talk about kind of the intro. What is the elevator pitch of Catalyst Offsite? What exactly is it that Catalyst Offsite does? And why don't you walk us through that, and then we can take a look at the presentation that you put together for us.
Sure. So well, definitely, since, and it overlaps with the history of it, I mean, certainly since the late 90s, we were increasingly fabricating things in our shop and then shipping them. And at one point, almost 100% of our work was actually on the island of Manhattan, was the point of installation, and all the fabrication was done in Toronto. And we did work for, Hilfiger's global flagship and Bloomberg's headquarters and all kinds of things, and which actually grew out, interestingly, our approach out of trade shows that we'd done years before. And in fact, by the way, you'd be interested in this. I did a bunch of teleconferencing facilities at the time that this whole interweb thing got going, with some pretty big budgets, actually, interestingly. So what happened was basically there was a continuum. We echoed almost the shift that the whole construction industry has undergone, where we moved ever more towards full volumetric execution, which we started to do at the tail end of my time at Feature Factory, which became Feature Walters. Okay. And then obviously with Z Modular, full volumetric implementation. And so, we just feel like we're well positioned to help people find their place in that continuum, Amy Marx's term. And then do well in that spot. So as actually the second slide here says in the presentation, you don't have to go all the way to full volumetric modular if it doesn't make sense for you or for what you're doing. And the very large number of people that are panelizing these days really prove the wisdom of that fact. You can be productive and useful and a contributing member of society and not make volumetric modules.
Sure. Oh, well, you can make a component. So what you're saying is make a component in volumetric modules.
Yeah, or just make a component of the project better. Do it better. As you'll see in the slides, we've made some modest contributions that became hugely significant in the context of the specific project.
Sure. And with Catalyst Offsite, what is your marketplace? Who are your customers that you'd be talking to out there?
Well, I would say that we have a number of customers. Some of them would want to remain anonymous, others not so much. But the typical customer is somebody who has had significant previous exposure to construction, either actually being a builder or having purchased construction services. So they're either wanting to launch their own plant or wanting to improve an existing operation. And by the way, to be clear, right now, 100% of our customers are people wanting to start new plants. And they're at various stages in the process. So in one case, they've leased a facility, purchased some equipment, and aren't entirely sure how to get the most use out of it. In another case, they're negotiating the lease on a facility and wondering whether it's actually really suitable or not, and so on.
So you're helping your customers from the very beginning or inception of what they want to do all the way through, or even just stepping into the middle or something existing is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, like by the way, we're working for my former company, Feature Walters, who have a wide range of really, really terrific high-profile projects. Mm-hmm. And we're just intervening in a few very specific instances with respect to high-end stainless fabrication or jigs and fixtures. The areas that I've traditionally added some value to. So
sure.
So it's a minor role, but that I hope is pivotal.
Got it. All right, love it. So let's, before we hop into the presentation, everybody out there, listen, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Julian, do you know why we're live on Twitch?
No.
Because that's where the young people are, Julian. I mean, Twitch is the gaming platform. Twitch is you don't need a cane yet, but Twitch is where they're out there doing virtual reality gaming, where they're doing VR to a level that we haven't even seen in our industry yet, and they're not coming to us. So we've decided we're going to go to them. So we also live stream on Twitch, and we're getting a lot more people on it. And guess what? The head of the NAHB, the chairman of NAHB, actually is he comes to us live from Twitch almost every show.
Well, actually, that's very wise of you, and it's interesting, you know, having had to create and manage large design teams, you know, working in 3D processes for now it's decades. You know, certainly there's a lot of crossover between the design world and the 3D, you know, and the whole gaming world. As a matter of fact, the software, even the video cards, like my tower here has a you know, high-end gamer video card in it. And we can thank the gaming community for delivering that kind of math processing to the 3D, you know, the parametric modeling community. And I'm not kidding. So their demand has led to a boom in you know, high-end computing equipment that we take advantage of in the design industry.
Yeah, and they've been using BIM, so to speak, in their worlds for a long time. The way they've coded it, and I think there's so much that we can learn from them. In our industry. I mean, if you've ever seen some of this VR world stuff, it is so realistic, it'll blow your mind. Yeah. There's no reason why we can't be doing that here in our industry whatsoever. All right.
Well, we've had to generate, you know, hundreds of hours of such visualizations, right?
That's right. That's right. They probably do it in about 30 seconds compared to our 100 hours. Who knows? Who knows? All right, let's hop into your presentation, shall we?
Okay. Thank you.
There you go.
So, and I think this is working, right? Yeah, okay, good.
Yep.
So, so by the way, just, you know, my shout outs, the images in this portfolio are substantially from the portfolio of Feature Walters, the company that I founded back in '84. And you'll see the relevance, but they're very kindly letting us use content that, you know, is projects that I substantially ran and created. Right. Because, you know, it is important to be able to represent what it is that we do with some good visuals.
Absolutely.
So this is a statement I came up with to kind of position all of this. So while fully volumetric modular is the rage, and obviously I'm participating in that extensively, there is that issue of the big upfront spend on design resources, plant, and equipment that can be quite a barrier. There's a lot of people out there, and you think of the light steel frame panelizers. In many cases, they were light steel frame companies who have gradually moved into panelization. And really, you know, with acquiring a couple of these Howick or machines, I'll use Howick because they're a sponsor.
Thank you, Howick.
And some tables to put the parts together on, you know, you've got an investment of less than $1 million, and you're in the panelization business. So, you know, you don't have to be thinking 10 million, 20 million, 30 million in robots and everything else to start going down this path. And even migration, you know, migration. So we migrated, and I want to kind of take people through a series of images that show what our migration was like. So step one was realizing that when you, in the modern context, when you design something, you're effectively creating the code that will drive the CNC machines that make the stuff. So when you're designing the frame of a building in the software, the Howick software, you're creating the part program that's going to run on that Howick machine, and the two, you know, mesh really nicely. And of course, the structural steel industry has been doing that for a long time with Tekla. The automotive industry using CATIA, SolidWorks, and so on has been doing that. So recognizing that, the first thing I did in the process of getting into this full volumetric world was to create a facility that was ideal for parallel processing. So this had a lot of people communicating horizontally in the same room and working very effectively. Obviously, this is totally unfriendly to COVID, but believe me, this is way more effective than a bunch of people, you know, at home communicating through email and whatever, regardless of what technology they use. And it helped us a lot. So this shows the various departments. We had a component modeling group, we had a sub-assembly modeling group, and a master assembly modeling group in a purpose-built facility, which is now, by the way, owned by Walters. And even the whole layout of the building was built around how computer models of complex projects are created. And this gives you an idea here of the workflow as it progressed through the building. And of course, we could move people around, you know, from department to department, depending on what phase we were at in the project. So a typical project that went through a space like this is this one. This was the Shaw Discovery Auditorium in Edmonton. So we had an existing, I should show you this, an existing complex concrete, cast-in-place concrete space. And the first thing we did was took a 3D laser scan of it so we have all the geometry documented. And then we start modeling into that scan. And you can see even the humps and bumps on the concrete on the wall are actually there in the concrete that's been imported into this model. And then we kick out visualizations without color, very straightforward, just so we can see where we're headed. Then add more and more details. And we created, in this case, this whole idea of an interface frame that goes between the base building, which is complex and irregular, and our interior, which is very perfect. So that interface frame installed quickly and easily, and then all the panels came in, and there's the finished result. So that's an entirely prefabricated interior that went in quite quickly and easily and was really perfect. I mean, we developed a system of extrusions to close the gaps because they needed a somewhat airtight environment.
Right.
It's medical teleconferencing is what this does. And so, a scene like this, 100% of what you see in that image came out of our shop here in Toronto and was installed in Edmonton without any fitting or filing, with the exception, in this case, of the electronics in the rack. And I'm not joking. And like the microphones on the tables in the background. And other than that, this is an entirely prefabricated interior.
Yeah. I mean, so the precision was spot on. What you're telling me is you didn't need a dumpster, Julian? No
dumpster. I mean, that's a great way of saying it. This is a zero dumpster project.
I love it.
So that same facility, and that were the images that were on the screen, by the way, of the recording studio for architects. So we won the contract to supply all of the washrooms for a $2.5 billion Norman Foster tower as modules. And our parent company, Walters, was doing the structure of the building. So here we see the design of the modules in context with the structure of the building. And here, this shows the power of these tremendous parametric platforms. So there's a rendering of our computer model of the module on the gravimetrically neutral platform that we hoisted them on. And this gives you an idea of the level of detail. So every pipe has the portion of it that fits into the collar. There's been some simplification of some of the components, but not much. And 100% of the parts for that project were cut from model data. So here we're putting together pipe strings for the plumbing and so on. Here's the ceilings going together on a line, walls going together on a line, floors going together on a line. And then these very highly completed components would be tipped up and assembled to create the finished modules, which were then sported out of the building. This shows, this classic. I like this image almost more than any other from multiple years of portfolio building. Compare this scene of two plumbers at work to what it would be like for these guys on the job site if it was on site. They'd be on their hands and knees, offcuts on the 40th floor in January with a 40-mile-an-hour wind ripping through the torn rags hanging on the outside of the building. Like the whole thing's just a nightmare. And by the way, having to go multiple floors to find a washroom and, et cetera, et cetera. And even you see the guy in the inset there is pressure testing the sprinkler system.
Right. Well, it also allows for better quality control, let alone a better working environment.
No comparison. I mean, the quality to an extent becomes somewhat automatic. It's so visible and there's, constant supervision by the QC people. And so it's not like somebody showing up once a month with a clipboard and a hard hat and having a cursory look at things.
That's right.
It's continuous all day, every day. So that's what these things looked like on the inside when they left our plant. They're entirely lined in back painted glass and granite. And there they are on the trucks on the way to the site. This is all very familiar for modular people. Here they are being hoisted. Here's the movement into the building and the platform docked, and we're using air bearings to move these around in the building. And so there's, we always like to call this the tail of the tape. There's a view of the computer model of the module in the building and the surrounding steel, and there's the finished product taken the same perspective. And there's zero variation in any detail other than the sloppiness of the wiring.
Right. Well, there shouldn't be, and I'm going to harp on this for a while as part of my new soapbox, Julian. Jerry from Integra made the comment about how precise Offsite is. And, you know, in our industry, he was saying how NASA is the best offsite builders there are, right? With the space station. If you really think about how they're taking parts up there and what they're doing, and we can't seem to get it right on the ground, it makes zero sense. And he always makes the point of saying, and I like to tout it because it's very true, field verify should come off every plan that we ever have moving forward. It doesn't make sense anymore. It's antiquated, whatever that word is. So what you just showed is a prime example of that, because not only doing those modules off-site to precision makes a big difference, but taking those modules and then having to wheel them through a building and knowing the precise diameters and dimensions and everything else to get past steel structural columns and everything else that falls in a building, so it just fits in place and you can snap it together, so to speak, you know, button it up, whatever we want to call it. That's a huge visualization for people that are just watching this to really understand where we're going in offsite construction.
Yeah. Now, by the way, you know, it's worth pointing out with respect to this job that we had a number of advantages, a number of things that made it easier than the offsite construction that many of your viewers, many people in our industry have to deal with. Here, you know, because this is really a pod going into an existing building, yes, we had to get it accurately located so the drywall and everything else around it would meet it. But we had very much a self-contained universe here with these pods. So we had a very perfect world in an otherwise very imperfect world. And this I would say that characterizes in many ways, you know, what offsite that's not volumetric can be, which is that you create this world of perfection, perfect process, perfect execution that's in a very otherwise imperfect space. And that becomes what you're managing.
Yeah, for sure. You got a second for a question?
Absolutely. Shoot.
Let me put this up here real quick. So, hey, look, Twitch in the house. Love it. What design software tools are you recommending? Is IFC helping integrate the various software tools, or are you doing it some other way?
This is a very good and very sensitive question. So we have, you know, we've had a bunch of people working in-house using Revit and so on, and pretty well all of those architectural platforms we have found to be profoundly wanting when used for manufacturing management. Like I would describe them as next to useless. And you know, so Revit has a lot of really basic problems with the management of large models and the editing and the issuing of cut files. And the classic is that, you know, these vectors, when you zoom in on them, are all kind of just slightly missing each other. So planes aren't accurately bounded and so on. And so you have to use tons of applets and hacks. And, you know, they have these AEC hackathons and whatever. Whereas the automotive industry and the aerospace industry has essentially landed on CATIA, which SolidWorks is now essentially CATIA. And all of this stuff is native to it. Like, it's just not at all complicated. All of the collaborative workspace and everything else, you know, checking in and out. So, you know, my answer to any question regarding software is, don't try using stuff that is not for manufacturing. You know, it's that kind of simple. Yeah. And so unfortunately, the whole BIM thing, you know, has been dominated by Autodesk, and it's a real problem in my view. Right. I don't know if you know about this whole letter from the architects to Autodesk, but some hundreds of architects signed this letter saying, you know, we're appalled at how little development there's been of the software, and how, you know, so many of the things we need just don't ever appear. You go over to the SolidWorks universe and it's all there in your toolbars. You're ready to go. So it's an interesting story.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, it's like anything else. There's always going to be new players pushing the boundaries, and they've been around a long time. And it's. I can't speak for the architects, but it's changing fast.
Yeah, there's emerging software all the time, like Onshape is on strong and so on. So that's where I'd look for answers to that question. Is don't look at the architectural software, because it's actually not manufacturing software. It's architectural.
Correct. It's not designed for it. Absolutely. Well, listen, while we're here, we're just going to say hi and catch up a little bit. And anybody that's joining us, if you have a question, please put a Q in front of it so I know it's a question. I have a feeling the comments are going to keep coming in. So from this point forward, put a Q in. Let's say hi to a few people here that showed up to see you. Joel Hutchins, what's happening, Joel? Julian Brown is an absolute legend of the industry. Man, you got a fan base. Listen, Julian will be sticking around after the show to sign autographs. Joel, don't you worry about it.
Say hello, Joel. He and I had drinks in the Junction here in my neighborhood about a year ago. You know, I guess just before the
right.
COVID, just before the COVID got started.
Yeah. Well, Joel's doing some pretty amazing stuff out there, and he's really thinking beyond, and it's good to point out. Yeah. So I don't know if the room could handle both you and Joel Hutchins in the same room.
It was electric. It was an electric experience. We had to stay 10 feet apart so that the radioactivity didn't go critical.
Make your hair stand up like Einstein. I love it. All right, Henry Nickelberg. Oh, volumetric royalty in the house. All the way from France. I love it. Chad Crosby says, wow, that's a pedigree. I guess Julian like starting companies and gets bored. For sure. We got George Ryman from Phoenix, Arizona. Let's see who else we have. We got Rick Hopkins, who's big in the modular space. Rick, it's great to see you from Hotlanta. This is what this show is all about, this next comment from Chad Crosby right here. I am new to all of this, so this is mind blown. Just amazing. So this is the idea, Julian. We're really good at talking to ourselves, but having people like Chad and others that join and start seeing what's happening in our industry, that's what we need more of. Chad, we really appreciate it, and we would love it. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to our YouTube and send this out and like and share so people can watch it as well. I love it. We got Francesca. How are you? Chad Crosby, I completely agree with you. Offsite is the way forward. But my question is, are they cheaper? There's the go. Is Offsite cheaper in your mind, Julian?
Well, it's very application specific, right? So, I mean, I think you're crazy if you try to apply any technology where it's not suited. And so you've got to look at, and by the way, you know, the last slide that I have, as we were talking before we started the show, it kind of covers, you know, doing the math. You got to do the math. So if you're doing a building that has a very large number of variants, you know, where every unit, every module would have to be different, it's totally unsuited to modular construction. Big, wide spaces are not really terrifically suited to modular, volumetric modular construction, and so on. So there's a bunch of, you know, a bunch of building types that are not suitable to modular construction. There's no question about it. But I can't think of a case where some degree of offsite execution is not automatically part of the process these days. So all the curtain wall companies are scanning the facade of the building with, you know, laser scans and predictively installing all the hardware and then hanging their curtain wall on.
Right.
You know, the structural steel business has been essentially a offsite for I don't know, since the time of the Eiffel Tower. You know, the Eiffel Tower was made in a factory and then delivered to the site. They didn't drill the pieces of steel, you know, sitting out in the middle of the field, you know. That's right. And so on. So yeah, you know, is offsite cheaper? Well, it had better be, or don't use it. You know, I think that's maybe the answer to the question. Pick the cases where it works and ignore the cases where it doesn't.
Well, this has driven a whole conversation to the right. So please put a Q because there's a lot of people going back and forth. But Francesca did say, as she's learning from Tom Reddy and others, reduce construction time, reduce costs, environmentally friendly. What's the biggest challenge with procurement and logistics? They're answering that in the comments, so you don't have to answer that. Let's just see who else is here and get on with it. We got Buzz Holitzer. Hey, Buzz, thank you for joining us today. Good to see you. Joe Butler's in the house. I love to give out Joe a shout out because Joe is with Forward Solutions Group, who is one of our sponsors for today's show. So it's always great to have Joe and his team joining us. So here is a question. Francesca has followed the instructions, which I'm so grateful. Thank you. So reduce construction time, reduce costs, environment friendly. What's the biggest challenge? Okay, so she is asking the question now. Maybe it wasn't answered in the comments. You got any thoughts on that? And then we'll get back to the presentation.
So reduce construction time for sure. I would say that that's, you know, universally correct. Reduced cost, I would say sometimes, not always. environmentally friendly, I would say that benefit is oversold to an extent. I'm not certain that, because you may say there's no dumpster at the site, but you know what? We certainly have had dumpsters in our plants. If you have total control of the design process from the beginning to the end, then you can definitely optimize the building so that there's minimal waste.
Yeah.
And certainly, like in the case of steel, for instance, working from coil is going to help you a lot compared to working from, long material like angles and channels and I-beams and stuff. Sure. So, so again, it's about how well you manage the process. And if environmental friendliness is an objective, then yes, it's going to be easier to deliver, but it's not inherent. Right. Put it that way.
Sure. All right. Appreciate all the questions. Again, if you have a question, please put a Q in front of it moving forward. All right. As we get back, we're going to hop back into the presentation. And after this presentation, which is we're almost halfway through our show, we're going to start talking about the categories of offsite, defining the categories. What do they mean? Are we all confused? Because if we are, then the consumer's confused, but we'll get to that here shortly. All right, Julian, back to you.
All right. Well, thank you. So, so this is a job, this harkens back to around 2010, 2011. But so at the time they were building this tower in Mecca in Saudi Arabia, and it's a 180-story tower. It's now completed and occupied. So it is the second tallest building in the world, but also the largest by floor area. The thing is really like immense. And you can tell by the number of cranes on the top of it and so on. So what was going on is that the steel for the top 60 floors, which is what we really dealt with, was they were doing a significant amount of work on the steel at elevation that could have been done on the ground. So we were brought in to basically to create a team that could help accelerate the assembly of the building, the erection of the building. And we actually, when we started, the prediction was that it would be about 4 to 5 years to complete the upper portion of the building. We got that down to about 1.5 years. So we actually had a very material impact on the schedule for this project. And interestingly, it led to us, the company getting actually a tip from our customer, which was substantial, which is the only time that's ever happened to me in my life. So we received a large intentional overpayment of our bill.
Like a tip, like you give at a restaurant.
Literally gave us a tip because we'd saved them so many hundreds of millions of dollars that that they expressed their gratitude. So you by the way, I should just say to people, you hear stories about working in the Middle East and it's not that great a place. But we had a wonderful experience with the Saudi Bin Laden Group, who is the largest GC in the whole area, and we're a tremendous customer. So here's some views into the Tekla model. And so, the first kind of thing we do is we figure out, what's the erection sequence? How do you actually assemble a floor? How do you get multiple teams working at once? How much steel is actually required to put together a floor? So there's all the steel for a single quadrant laid out, which, we improved the whole laydown and handling of it and everything. Right. So then we figured out that if we could dress the columns with all of their steel and all of their accessories that were needed for stability, and we could create various tools that would allow the crane to release stuff and go back for more, then we could greatly reduce the load on the cranes, which was the real burden. And a very important innovation was they were actually setting up forms and casting concrete onto the steel up at elevation. And we moved all of that work to the ground and developed all the techniques for doing it. So it shows, installing various clips that hadn't occurred, putting in blocking, adding the reinforcement, adding the concrete, rotating the component manually, doing additional work to that beam, and then how to get them onto the site when they're still a little wet, haven't been given the full 28 days. This shows how to dress a column so that, all the accessories you require on the column are already on it when it leaves the ground. So the concrete's cast into it, all the stability stuff is all there. And even we started putting on the safety equipment. So we would add the tag lines and not the tag lines, the tie-off lines and the stanchions and so on to the steel. So what we were hoisting again was absolutely ready to rock, And this had the effect of dramatically increasing the rate at which this building went together. I mean, literally 4 times. It was good. We were putting up 4 times as much steel in a day as as they had prior to our involvement. And you can see in these images lots of those accessories being used. So there we get to the end of it, of the slideshow, which is these basic questions, this list that you had found on our website, apparently, which I wasn't really aware it was there. And it is, I've added the extensions of these, which is really, what are the issues in each of these areas? And I think, I'm certainly interested in a conversation around these issues.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's jump into CAPEX. How much money do we need to start a plant? I mean, this is what holds a lot of people back. And on our show, and I'm going to put a screen while we talk real quick. On our show, Julian, one of the things that I feel that prevents people from moving forward with offsite construction, whether it's volumetric, modular, panelized, tip-up concrete, whatever steel, is they don't understand how to quantify the value and the cost. Yeah. And I think, this is something that I think is a super big deal. If we're, as an industry, going to move forward, those are two of the, or three of the things, value, cost, and that we need to define, but also who are we? And we'll get into that in a minute, but I'll let you jump back into it and we can go through these if you like. Sure.
I mean, just on this, how much money do we need to start a plant? I mean, so I took the plant where we did the pods for the bow in Alberta. We spent about 800,000 Canadian, which is sort of 600,000 or 650,000 US, to set up that plant from a bare space to churning out stuff that was, we were selling it to our customer at $450 a square foot. Wow. And the project was hugely successful. By the way, they saved an enormous amount of money compared to doing all that work on site, and it was faster and all of those things. So, you can, if you don't make the frame, by the way, and if you're in steel frame modular construction, you don't make the frame, then you can, start up a modular plant like with drywall putty knives and some screw guns and so on.
That's right.
So, I would say that figure varies from, say, 50,000 to 50 million or 100 million. And pick your spot on that spectrum and know your financial capacity and understand the questions of productivity. Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Plant size is a fun one because people wonder, how many square feet. Well, so we do the math like this: how many square feet of modules can you kick out of your plant per annum per square foot of plant, and what's the ratio? And so when the product is super high end, the ratio is maybe 2 to 1. You got a 100,000 square foot plant, you're going to get 200,000 square feet worth of modules out of it in a year. Mm-hmm. You got a low end product like that's air stapled trailer home sort of thing. You might get 8 times your plant area per annum in output, but your margin on the product is way, way lower. So, picking a plant size is in many ways not as important as deciding how many square feet per annum you want per square foot of plant based on the product type. And I think a lot of people miss that. They totally miss that point. Well, you got to know who you are and what you're building. And then what you're saying is once you understand who you are and what you're building, then you can back into the plant size on what you need to put out to generate whatever value or income you're looking to generate from it. Yeah, like 2,000 modules a year out of a plant is actually, realistically a big number, right? Yeah. 200 modules a year out of a plant, 2,000 modules a year out of a plant is a really big number. And lots of people talk about achieving that, but hardly anybody does. And there's reasons for that. They're pretty simple to understand in most cases. But there's quite a bit of unrealistic expectation with regards to the to the value of the product and the amount of it you can produce. Yeah, for sure, for sure. So market vertical kind of falls into knowing who you are as well. Well, this is the kind of thing you see is, we're going to start a modular company and we're going to do affordable housing and public housing and hotels and we're going to do, kiosks like, drive-through restaurants, and we might even maybe do a data center, and why not try a hospital and so on. And, I look at companies like Blocks, who are Chris Giotina's company, tremendous company, And boy, do they know their vertical. Their vertical is the medical field. They're totally focused on that, laser focused on that, and they're doing extremely well, maybe better than anybody on the continent right now. And that's because of a super clear understanding of what business he's in and how he executes it, you know, and it's brilliant. So knowing your vertical, I don't know. I just think this is basic. I mean, you know, virtually all other industries respect this concept. You know, why not us?
Yeah, why not? It makes no sense, but we're gonna get into that here in just a moment.
Yeah.
So degree of self-performance, build or buy?
So you know I think the classic, you know, would be say a bath, you know, in a bathroom. You know, you got a couple of options for the whole shower stall. One is you buy a completely unitary fiberglass shower stall, and it, you know, it just drops in, and it take, you know, 2 people 10 minutes to install it. And the alternative is you've got an ornate glass shower stall with, you know, it requires all kinds of blocking in the walls to take the loads of the hinges, and it's tiled beautifully and grouted and trimmed everywhere and so on. And so, you know, what are the relative merits of those two? I mean, so clearly the unitary one-piece, you know, vacuum formed, blow molded, fiberglass molded, whatever shower stall is far more efficient to install. But there's a whole category of customers and premises, you know, building types where, you know, it would feel too much like you're in prison, or it's too cheap, or somehow everybody's squashed into a mold. You know, they don't have enough individuality or something like that. So, you know, so this question of whether you just buy something off the shelf and install it or make the whole thing yourself, a lot of factors at play there, you know?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, degree of in-plant completion, 70%, 50%. How much is going to be done in the manufacturing facility versus on site is where you're going with this?
So you're shipping air. You're shipping air, so you better make sure there's that bubble of air has as much value in it as possible, or your every road mile is wasted. So I feel that the degree of in-plant completion should be as high as humanly possible. To that end, you know, having the facades attached already and having them made around their edges to other facade panels is hugely desirable. You know, back in the day, I mean, there was a company who I won't name because it's somewhat embarrassing, but they were shipping modules, and then you had to pour concrete on the floors and level it at the site. And that's how they got the floors, you know, from module to hallway to module level, if you can imagine. And then they would put in the door frames and the doors and so on, you know, after having poured the concrete. I mean, that's got to be the ultimate in madness. And those modules ex fabrica were like $90 a square foot, and to the customer they were $225. And you know, that company left $100 and whatever worth of work on the table when they shipped the module, which doesn't make any sense. So the degree of in-plant completion ought to be as high as possible, you know, unless your site is across the street from your plant. Right.
All right, so product quality, you know, that's something we talked about, right? Good, better, best. Are you in affordable housing, or are you doing high-end structures?
You know, anybody in any manufacturing enterprise in the world today is competing with China, increasingly with Vietnam, Cambodia.
Right.
You know, we've been competing for a long time with Japan and Korea. And, you know, if you don't realize that quality is everything, you just have completely missed the boat. And so, you know, the margin lies in the higher quality product if you're making it in North America, period.
Right.
And otherwise you're exposed to the entire globe with respect to, you know, competition. And so, you know, so quality is the #1 generator of value because it creates space between your costs and what you can sell the product for. Simple as that.
Absolutely. All right, so we have degree of uniformity, the #1 destroyer of value. So are we saying that if we're doing one-off products all the time, we're going to reduce our value?
It's kind of that simple. I mean, no customer, it seems, is willing to pay for the cost of design of buildings that have 20 or 30 different kinds of modules in them, or for the design and redesign of ever-varying product. Right. You know, so I think there's been a big swing over the past few years in the modular industry globally towards this understanding. And so the primary task of anyone involved in the design of modular structures is to minimize the number of variants. And so your line can run tickety-boo. This really a big factor in all of this is that, it is not the case that mass customization in the modular industry is super easy to implement. It may be on something like a bathroom pod to an extent, but at the level of the entire building, it becomes very challenging. And you look at the automotive industry. I mean, yes, you can get your upholstery in different colors and textures, or the car body in different colors and textures. But guess what? That chassis and everything that's bolted to it practically is identical. Maybe there's an air conditioner present, absent, but the holes for it were all there, and the space for it was all there when that car went down the line. So, this is super important to recognize this one.
Right. And I think we're going to hop into that too, talking about products and standardization of products and product categories. Let's cover the shipping categories, and then let's come back to that, and let's get into defining this industry. And I'm going to put a couple of your products up there so people know exactly what I'm talking about.
So this is enough. Shipping radius, we kind of addressed that already with the degree of in-plant completion. If you're shipping air, you can't ship it very far and hold its value. If you're shipping a high value product, you can ship it across the continent.
Well, and that's it. And a lot of companies are set up on the coast so they can ship, like DMD and Mod IQ and IQ Module, I think it is, over in Poland. There's a couple of them that are currently working here in the States all over the place.
Yeah.
I love it.
And their degree of completion is very high, by the way. DMD, Polcom, all those guys, they're FortiPro. You look at their modules as they're placing them, and they're highly complete.
Yeah, for sure.
And very, very well, very nicely made.
All right, let's get into the second part of this show, and then we'll wrap it up. But the reality is this, Julian, even yourself, right? We have a category, we have a definition issue, we have an identity crisis, as the way I see it, and I think defining the categories of offsite, if we were to think of ourselves like the auto industry, right, where I know if I log in, I can get an SUV, I can get a sedan, I can get a mini something, right? Or the computer industry, if you go to Apple's website, I mean, it lists them out right off the bat, right? I got some notes here, right? You can get a Mac, an iPad, a watch, a TV, music stuff. It's very defined. You know what you're getting, whether you're in industry or out of industry. How do we look at defining who we are as an industry? For example, even with, you have things, right? You have a Cata lift, halos and hoisting rigs. You have Cata, Cata MEP, self-locating, self-sealing MEP connections. And then you also have Cata Fix, autonomous powered module locking systems. Now I put those up there threefold because I want people to know some of the names of these things. But as an industry in general, how do you know where you fall? Whether you're modular, volumetric, panelized, Cata Fix, it's kind of all over the place. If we were to build a website with a list across the top, how would you define it?
Well, certainly, with the tool and die background has really, I would say, defined my life. And so my approach to all of this stuff has been to, the control of geometry, the use of appropriate levels of technology wherever possible. And so I would say that banner in my case is, like intelligent structural solutions or something, or bringing mill writing to construction, bringing the tool and die mentality to construction, bringing manufacturing to construction. That's really like all these catalogs up here. They're not toilets and shower heads and whatever. They're bearings and shafts and servo motors, hydraulic pumps and so on. That's kind of our end of the modular industry. Is that part of it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But so the UK, right, in Singapore, you work globally. I mean, obviously with the work in Saudi Arabia, and I agree with you. The UAE, I've done quite a bit of work over there. I mean, there's some great people to work for as long as you perform. Yeah. But they've done, UK and Singapore specifically, has really done a great job of defining their industry, what categories you fall under. Are you components? Are you systems? Are you modular? You know, are we offsite, spelled with a hyphen or without a hyphen? There's all these different parts and pieces. And even with Catalyst, you know, offsite and what you're doing, if I'm out there and I'm a consumer or I'm a developer or I'm a builder, how the heck do I know where to start and what to look at?
Well, I would say to an extent, our offering consists of helping you figure that out. Certainly, you know, we've been able to bring perspective to people very quickly. Actually, it's almost a challenge that, you know, somebody engages us and, you know, with a 1 hour meeting, we've solved a lot of their problems already. And a lot of it has to do with you know, steering clear of the icebergs and, and figuring out where the open water is. So yeah, that's how to answer that. Yeah.
Well, for sure. And I think, but you know, one of the things that we're trying to do on the show is bring some definition for the industry in general. And I agree with you. And I'm going to ask one other question here before we wrap up and get to some more of the comments that are out there. Volumetric and modular. Is there a difference in the two in your mind?
Well, so volumetric modular, I've always used the term to mean a box that is substantially factory completed and delivered to the site and assembled with other boxes to make a building.
Yeah.
Whereas modular could be a bath pod or which is obviously a volume, but it's going within another volume that wasn't delivered modular.
Right.
So I would call that a componentizing, you know, and then there's panelizing. So that's the spectrum for me is, you know, full volumetric, component, panel, and then stick.
Sure.
Stick build.
So this is what I love about this conversation and why we have it, you know, because if you look at like our traditional, you're in Canada, here in the States, modular, for most people, is a modular home. It's a full system home. It's just not a bath pod, right?
Yeah.
And then for others, you get into panelization. You look at systems like Integra, right, where they do floor, walls, and roof. Is that a full? Yes. Is that a system or a component? Because that industry will say, well, other panelization companies that just do walls is a component of a system. And this is where I'm trying to say, all right, how does anybody know where to start and look at us? Because we haven't even defined ourselves.
Well, I mean, it's abundantly clear to me from this conversation that the only logical first step is to call Catalyst Offsite. I mean, that's really.
I love it. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. I love it. I love it. Well, listen, Julian, this has been great, man. See, that's an hour. That's a pretty good hour, right?
Well, it feels like 15 minutes. I'm astounded.
Oh, no.
You keep up a pace. You're the pace man. You're the pacemaker.
Hey, listen. Hey, we're not done yet. We got to get to some questions. You ready for some questions?
Bring it on. Bring it on.
Tom Reddy, Synergy Steel in the house. How's the timeline resources spend look? 40 to 60% pre-manufacturing, 20% manufacturing, and 20% logistics. Does this sound right?
Boy, oh boy. Well, this a lot of this has to do with the degree of automation. So the higher your degree of automation, the higher degree of pre-manufacturing time and resources, and the lower the actual production time. This timeline looks to me like a highly automated timeline. You'd flip these figures around if it was a more manumatic kind of plant. And by the way, to put this in perspective, you know, conventional construction at a site where you've got folks, you know, looking at blueprints and then cutting material over their knee is, you know, 2% pre-manufacturing and 98% site work. And by the way, your space station, and I love that analogy. Boy, oh boy, that would be 95% pre and 5% post.
Right. Well, that was Jerry from Integra. I can't take credit for it, but he did say, you know, can you imagine they get the space and it says field verify?
Yeah. At least there's lots of slop on either side of the space station to take up dimensional variation.
Right. Asteroids are made of iron. Maybe they can, aren't they? I think a lot of iron in asteroids. Maybe I'm wrong there.
Iron meteorites. Yeah.
I love it. All right, let's keep rocking on. Builder Boy from Twitch. back at us here. Have you heard of any on-site, offsite setups? In other words, have a pop-up factory near a large project. Seems feasible with roll steel machines. Absolutely, Tom.
Absolutely. I think we're all aware of multiple examples of that. Somebody was announcing one the other day on LinkedIn that they're setting one up. There's a fellow here in Ontario that's doing one of those.
Yeah, B. Marco out of Atlanta. They've been doing some pop-up facilities, right?
It's a great idea. Great idea.
Yeah, it is a great idea. In fact, on the 14th, we have a show. They're pop-up CLT plants where they're harvesting the local lumber in rural areas, right? Because we can serve the big areas, but the rural areas still need served, and they've got the concept in place and they're building stuff. So it absolutely makes sense to me to be able to do some of that stuff, especially when you have like Howick machines and things like that you can print everything you need right on site.
By the way, check out, everybody should check out, there's a website called deadmalls.com, because, there's lots of, in North America, there's lots of malls that, have failed for one reason or another. I think those are ideal locations for pop-up modular factories. Interesting.
Listen, they got the infrastructure, they got the power, they have the water, sewer, bathrooms, they got everything that you need.
Parking lots, for outdoor storage. Yeah.
For sure. All right, Pedro from YouTube, all the way from Brazil. What's happening, Pedro? Julian, have you worked with mass timber? That's funny. I just talked about mass timber. There you go. Have you worked with mass timber?
Well, so interestingly, within the body of patents that Zed Modular acquired from me, there is a mass timber connection, and it's public knowledge. Obviously, the patent is published by the United States Patent Office, and it's there within the body of that knowledge, and so I'm a huge fan of mass timber, though I'm becoming increasingly skeptical of the environmental claims. I've seen some, I've read some very good material on this, which we could get into that in another call or something. But the much touted environmental benefits of mass timber are significantly overstated. So it may be more of a. And by the way, the buildings are routinely costing, north of $400 a square foot. The recent examples here in Toronto are $600, $800 a square foot. So it's very unclear. I don't believe that it's an economical solution. Mass timber modular. Yeah.
Well, that would just be an interesting debate to have on the show, to have that debate and understand it, right? Because I bet there's a lot of people that argue with you on that one. So
the bottom line is, when you cut a forest down, right, that forest which was absorbing carbon is no longer absorbing carbon, and it's not going to be absorbing carbon at the rate it was until it goes back to the size that it was, which in our climate in North America, in northern North America, is 50, 75 years. And so while the concept might work, over long time periods, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, in the short term, cutting down forests and turning them into mass timber actually reduces the planet's ability to absorb carbon from the atmosphere. So, and by the way, on the other hand, with respect to steel, yes, it's deeply evil right now, as in terms of its carbon footprint. Right. But I've been posting all kinds of stuff that I come across on the move to no carbon or low carbon steel production through electric steel making and H2 driven steel making and so on. And there are a number of factories under construction as we speak that will be producing steel with almost no carbon.
Love it. I love it. Okay. Well, you know what? I think we're going to form a panel of a steel person, a wood person, a CLT person, a concrete individual, and I think we'll have. I think that would be a fun debate if we had some real direct questions that everybody can answer.
A cage match, a carbon cage match.
A carbon cage match. There you go. I love it. As Mark Willie and I call it, we call it the carbon disaster.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get a couple more shout outs here, and let's see who else we have going on. There you go, Jerry Duden. Great to hear Julian today, talking a lot of sense. That's great. Chad Crosby says, great information, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Chad also had a follow-up question. maybe it's for his own knowledge. What are logistic concerns in the industry? How can I help companies before their projects begin?
Well, it's funny. I often have to refer people to the whole concept of a high-wide map. So virtually every jurisdiction in the industrial world, some government agency publishes a map. In some cases, it isn't government, but it's always available, that shows you all the low bridges and, tight turning radiuses and so on, within limits of accuracy. And so it allows the logistics people to plan the journey of a module from the plant to the site. So the key issue here is you've got to know the actual route that the module will take before you can define the maximum size that those modules can be. And believe it or not, people have made the mistake of thinking just because it shows, Google Maps or whatever, I can follow it, it makes sense. And then they start to try to deliver the stuff, and there's some, local issue. That's
construction, whatever.
Yeah. Construction that's occurring right in the middle of the road that they had to go up. That's going to last for 8 months.
Yeah.
So having a really, really good and verified logistical plan where somebody has actually driven the route and confirmed that all of the no power lines and construction, everything else, and it's all viable, and a contract that allows for that doesn't throw the blame for unanticipated restrictions in the delivery route to be passed to the supplier.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, logistics is everything. The trucking industry has been doing it forever, regardless, oversized loads, things of that, volumetric, heck, even big motorhomes. I happen to be driving around the country in one right now. You can't follow Google Maps. So you're absolutely right. Logistics is the thing, and attention to detail.
A lot of modular companies have their own fleets of trailers precisely because the trailers can be somewhat specialized. Like I've seen NRB's trailers, they're gorgeous, telescopic, trombone arrangements that they, can compact at the site and send back to the plant in shortened condition. I mean, really, really nice equipment. And
that's right.
They're going to be $100,000 a piece or something or more. So, that's a big aspect of logistics is build or buy the equipment, the specialized equipment you need.
For sure. They can carry the weight loads, carry the lengths. You really got to pay attention to all of those different things. It's just not one trailer fits all type thing. All right, let's say hello to a few more people, then we're going to wrap it up. We have Darren Sari joining us today. What's happening, Darren? Good to see you. I'm glad you're on the show. Darren was at World of Modular last year, or was it 2 years now? I guess year and a half as well. Optimum Modular Solutions. Good to have you joining us today, Darren. Glad to see you. And the Mickelbergs in the house, Henry Mickelberg. Add pop-up factories to the list of offsite definition categories. All right, see, Julian, this is what I'm talking about. I'm having these conversations in all these different industries day in and day out. And I'm confused. I'm confused. Hey, maybe we can sit down and we can talk about defining.
Don't admit to that, Dave.
Listen, I don't have to admit. I'm on camera every day. People can see it as clear as day. Right? I mean, it's just obvious that some days I don't know which way I'm going. But today I'm pretty sure. All right. So great guest. Please have Julian back. So Julian, you got a lot of requests that you're the man and everybody wants to have you back. We had a lot of great questions and a lot of people following us. Is there anything? Well, let me ask you this first. What is your one thing, whether it's business or personal? Share the one thing that makes you successful or helps you strive through your day, or the one thing you believe in more than anything else?
Never stop improving. It's really simple. I've never been somebody to rest on my laurels because I just can't. I can't stop myself from wanting to just keep trying to make things better. And every new invention builds on the previous generation of inventions and the previous generation of thinking, and there you go. So, and sometimes, by the way, you need to just tear it right down and start from zero. Incremental change can be a trap in of itself, and you have to just throw everything out, start again. And so, there it is. Never stop.
Well, listen, you're
never stop improving.
Well, you're a true entrepreneur. You get it. You've been successful. I'm sure you've had failures just like everybody else. That's how you become successful. So we really appreciate that feedback coming from you. Rick Hawkins, one last time. Thanks, Julian, for thoughtful presentation on design for manufacturing, DFMA, hot topic these days. And I agree. All right, so listen, that's it. Unless you have any other wisdom you feel like imparting on our audience, we're going to wrap this show up.
Well, I love what you're doing. I really do.
Thank you.
You're an energetic, thoughtful person, and your partner as well. And it's really, this is something the industry is absolutely needed, and I'm very glad to see you doing it. So hats off to you for your contribution to this industry.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to Jennifer and myself and everybody out there who supports us. If you're not following Julian, please follow him. They also are on LinkedIn, so go follow Catalyst Offsite on LinkedIn as well. And as always, if you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, you're wrong. That's where all of our videos live. We really need your support in getting the word out there, so please like and share one last time. Julian, thank you so much for being on the show today. We'll come right back to you after our outro, so don't go anywhere. And everybody else out there, have a wonderful day. We will see you again on Friday at 1 o'clock with Mark Bare Naked Willie doing a little BS, building science. Bye now.